Imagine this: you're lying in bed at night, physically safe, nothing dangerous happening around you, and yet your mind is racing. Thoughts swirl. Worries pile up. Regrets from the past. Fears about the future. You can't shut it off. You try to distract yourself, maybe scroll on your phone, maybe pray it'll pass. But the truth is, this mental noise follows you everywhere, at work, in relationships, even during moments that are supposed to feel good. Now what if someone told you that the real cause of your suffering isn't the situation, it's not your circumstances, it's not even other people. It's your thinking. That's where Don't Believe Everything You Think begins. Written by Joseph Nguyen and released in 2022, this book isn't long. It's under 150 pages. No fluff. No heavy theory. But what it delivers is powerful. A message that's been described by readers all over the world as liberating, eye-opening, and even life-changing. This isn't your typical self-help guide. There are no 10 steps to happiness or complicated life strategies here. What Nguyen offers is inner clarity, the kind that dissolves anxiety, not just manages it. The book's title says it all. Don't believe everything you think. Simple? Yes. But also revolutionary. Because most of us live our entire lives inside our own heads, narrating, analyzing, judging, comparing, controlling. And without realizing it, we start to mistake that voice in our head for who we are. But it's not. That voice is just thoughts. And thoughts are not always true. In fact, most of them are conditioned, recycled, reactive, and completely unhelpful. Joseph Nguyen gently and profoundly shows us how we've been taught to believe that we need to think our way out of our problems. That if we just think harder, analyze deeper, fix ourselves better, we'll finally be happy. But what if the opposite is true? What if peace doesn't come from adding more knowledge, but from letting go of all the beliefs and stories that aren't serving us? What if happiness was never outside of us, waiting to be earned, but inside of us, waiting to be remembered? Nguyen blends modern psychology, Eastern philosophy, and raw human truth into something that feels almost like a meditation. Each chapter reads like a breath of fresh air, a moment to pause and rethink everything we've been told about the mind, identity, and suffering. But here's where this book really lands. In today's world, where mental health is declining, where people are overstimulated, burned out, and emotionally exhausted, Don't Believe Everything You Think is more than just a helpful read. It's a healing experience. It helps you recognize the trap of overthinking, break free from anxiety and self-judgment, understand the true source of suffering, and most importantly, reconnect with the peaceful awareness that's always been within you. And Joseph Nguyen doesn't position himself as some guru on a mountaintop. His writing is humble, clear, and filled with compassion. He's been through the overthinking, the pain, the search. And through his own transformation, he realized that the answers aren't complicated. They're already inside you. You just have to quiet the noise long enough to hear them. So if you've ever felt trapped by your thoughts, if you've ever wished you could just turn your mind off, if you're tired of thinking your way into more confusion, then this book is your invitation. Not to change who you are, but to remember who you've always been beneath the noise. So take a breath. Let go of trying to figure it all out. And let's begin the journey, one page, one insight, one awakening at a time. Welcome to Don't Believe Everything You Think. Let's begin with Chapter 1, The Journey to Finding the Root Cause of Suffering. The book opens with a personal, almost spiritual reflection, a moment that sets the stage for the entire journey ahead. Joseph Nguyen doesn't start by giving answers. He starts by sharing a feeling, a question, something many of us can relate to on a deep level. Why am I still suffering, even when everything in my life seems fine? On the outside, things can look okay. You've got a job, people around you, maybe even goals you're working toward. But something doesn't feel right. There's a constant sense of pressure, stress, or anxiety that just won't go away. And worse, no one else seems to really understand it. Nguyen takes us into that inner space, that space where the mind never stops moving, where thoughts are loud and constant. He admits something most of us are afraid to say out loud, that for a long time, he was stuck. He had read all the books, listened to all the motivational speakers, tried all the techniques, and still, nothing gave him lasting peace. That's when he began to realize, maybe the solution isn't adding more. Maybe it's about seeing what we've been blind to all along. So he started asking a deeper question: what is the root cause of suffering? Not just how to manage stress. Not just how to cope with negative thoughts. But where does suffering actually begin? That question became the seed of this entire book. This chapter isn't about preaching or solving things right away. Instead, it's about opening a door to honest self-inquiry. Joseph gently invites us to stop searching out there for peace and start looking in here. And that's a theme that will repeat over and over throughout the book. The truth is already within you. You just need to see it. One of the most powerful things about this first chapter is how relatable it feels. If you've ever been on a personal growth journey, if you've read book after book but still feel stuck, you'll feel seen. Nguyen doesn't talk like a guru. He talks like a friend who's been in the trenches of his own mind and found a path out, not by fixing his mind, but by understanding it. The chapter closes with a quiet realization: we can't truly be free until we understand what's keeping us trapped. And most of the time, it's not life that's holding us back. It's the way we think about life. This chapter is just the beginning. It's not about quick fixes. It's about slowing down, opening your awareness, and starting to ask better questions. Because once you understand the real source of suffering, everything begins to change. Now, Chapter 2, the root cause of all suffering. In this chapter, Joseph Nguyen begins to pull back the curtain on what's really keeping so many of us stuck in emotional pain. It's not what most of us assume. We're conditioned to believe that suffering comes from outside: bad relationships, financial stress, past trauma, difficult circumstances. But Nguyen flips that whole belief system upside down with a simple but powerful insight. He tells us the real root of our suffering isn't the world around us. It's the world within us, specifically our thinking. But even deeper than that, it's not just the thoughts themselves that cause suffering. It's the fact that we believe those thoughts without question. We trust them as if they're true. And we let them define who we are. So think about that for a second. When your mind says, "You're not good enough," or "You'll never succeed," or "They don't like you," you feel pain, not because of the actual situation, but because your mind interpreted the situation through a false belief. And you accepted that belief as fact. Nguyen explains that our thoughts are shaped by past conditioning. Things we were taught, stories we heard, experiences we didn't know how to process. And because those beliefs got repeated over and over again, we began to see them as absolute truth. We started building our identity around them. That's how suffering takes root. He gently reminds us, the mind is like a machine. It's constantly generating thoughts. But not all of those thoughts are meaningful or even relevant. Most of them are repetitive and fear-based. Yet we listen to them as if they're the voice of truth. That's where the suffering starts. The real problem isn't negative thinking, it's identifying with the thinking. When we believe everything our mind says, we begin to live reactively. We become anxious about the future, regretful about the past, and never fully present in the moment. We try to control people, outcomes, even our own emotions, because our thoughts are telling us that something is wrong, or that something needs to be fixed. But Joseph Nguyen invites us to pause and question that entire loop. He asks, what if your thoughts aren't facts? What if they're just mental noise? And what if the real you, the peaceful, aware presence beneath the noise, has been there the whole time, just waiting to be seen? This chapter isn't about rejecting your thoughts or trying to silence your mind by force. It's about creating space. Space between you and your thoughts. Space to observe without reacting. Space to remember that you are not the voice in your head, you are the one listening to it. That shift in perspective, even if it's subtle, is incredibly powerful. It gives you the ability to choose. To see your thoughts, but not get pulled into them. to witness them, but not let them define you. And once you start living from that space of awareness instead of identification, everything changes. Peace isn't something you have to chase, it becomes your natural state. By the end of this chapter, Nguyen has laid the foundation for the rest of the book. He's not just talking about mindset. He's pointing to a deeper truth, that the end of suffering doesn't come from fixing your life. It comes from realizing you were never broken to begin with, just lost in a sea of thoughts that were never yours to carry. Next is Chapter 3, Why Do We Even Think? In this chapter, Joseph Nguyen takes us deeper into the nature of thought by asking a simple but profound question. Why do we even think in the first place? Most of us have never stopped to ask that. We just accept that our minds are always active, always narrating, analyzing, planning, worrying. But have you ever wondered what thinking is actually for? What's the purpose behind it? Nguyen begins by explaining that thinking, at its core, is just a tool, a function. Something the mind does to help us survive, solve problems, make sense of the world, and create. That's it. That's all it was ever meant to be. But over time, especially in the modern world, we've become addicted to thinking. We've let it take over. Instead of using thinking as a tool, we've let it become our identity. We think about everything: what happened yesterday, what might happen tomorrow, what we should have said, what people might be thinking about us. And we don't even realize that most of those thoughts are just noise. The truth is, thinking isn't meant to run your life 24/7. It's meant to assist you in moments where conscious, logical processing is needed, like planning a trip, solving a math problem, or writing a sentence. But it was never meant to interpret every moment of your life through fear, judgment, and self-doubt. When we use thinking in this overactive way, it becomes the source of most of our emotional suffering. Nguyen gives the analogy of a knife. A knife is a useful tool. It can help you cut food, build things, even save your life in certain situations. But if you never put it down, if you sleep with it, shower with it, carry it everywhere, you're probably going to get hurt. The same goes for thinking. It's not that the mind is bad, it's just that we've forgotten how to use it properly. We've let it run the show, instead of recognizing that we're the ones in control. This chapter gently wakes us up to that realization. You don't have to constantly live in your head. You don't have to believe every story your mind tells. In fact, the more you slow down and simply observe your thoughts without attaching to them, the more peace you begin to feel. Nguyen also reminds us that when we're truly present, like during a moment of awe in nature, or when we're deeply focused or in love, we aren't thinking much at all. We're just being. And that's the natural state of peace he's guiding us back to in this book. Not a state where the mind disappears forever, but where the mind becomes quiet, useful, and no longer in charge. By the end of this chapter, the message becomes clear. We think because the brain was designed to solve problems. But when we make everything in life a problem to solve, we trap ourselves in a never-ending loop of worry and judgment. The key isn't to get rid of thinking, but to see it for what it is. A tool. A function. Not your identity. Not your truth. And certainly not something you need to obey every moment of the day. When you stop living as your thoughts and start living as the awareness behind them, life begins to feel lighter, clearer, quieter. And that's when healing really begins. Next is Chapter 4, Thoughts versus Thinking. This chapter draws an important line between two things we usually treat as the same, thoughts and thinking. But Joseph Nguyen shows us how they're actually very different, and understanding the difference is key to stepping out of suffering and into freedom. He starts by describing thoughts as spontaneous. They arise on their own. You don't control them. You don't create them. They just appear. Like clouds drifting through the sky of your mind. You might be walking down the street or brushing your teeth, and suddenly a random memory or fear or fantasy pops into your head. That's a thought. It just shows up. It's natural. Harmless. Thinking, on the other hand, is something different. Thinking is what happens when you engage with those thoughts. It's when you grab onto one of those mental clouds and start spinning a story around it. You analyze it. You judge it. You obsess over it. You replay it. That's thinking. And that's where most of our suffering begins. Nguyen explains that suffering doesn't come from thoughts themselves. It comes from believing the thought, attaching to it, and letting it spiral. Let's say a thought pops into your head that says, "I'm not good enough." That's just a thought. It's not true. It's not even personal. It's likely just a reflection of some old story. But the moment you engage with it, the moment you start thinking about it. Why do I always feel this way? What's wrong with me? What if other people see it too? That's when the suffering kicks in. Thinking gives the thought power. It fuels it. Like adding wood to a fire that would have otherwise gone out on its own. Nguyen also talks about how thinking creates an illusion of control. We think that by analyzing everything, by solving every problem in our heads, we'll somehow reach peace or certainty. But ironically, it does the opposite. It creates more tension, more anxiety, more noise. We get caught in loops, chasing clarity in a place where it doesn't exist. He invites us to do something radical but simple. Stop feeding the thoughts. Let them pass. Don't judge them. Don't try to fix them. Just notice. Be aware of them, but don't become them. This idea is liberating. You start to realize that you don't need to control your thoughts. You don't need to make them go away. You only need to disengage from the habit of thinking about them. That's where your freedom lives, in the space between the thought and your reaction to it. Nguyen also makes a gentle but powerful point. We're not here to figure life out with our minds. That's not the mind's job. The mind is great at functional things, like solving a math problem or planning your day, but it's not built to bring peace or fulfillment. Those come from a deeper place, your presence, your awareness, your connection to the now. By the end of the chapter, there's this subtle sense of relief. You realize you don't have to carry the weight of every thought. You don't have to live in the maze of thinking. You can observe your mind without obeying it. And in that space of observation, peace naturally starts to return. You are not your thoughts. You are not your thinking. You are the awareness that sees it all, calm, grounded, and free. Next is Chapter 5, Why Positive Thinking Doesn't Work. This chapter takes a turn that might surprise a lot of people. After all, we've been told for years that positive thinking is the key to happiness. Think positive, speak positive, visualize the good, and good things will come. Right. But Joseph Nguyen calls that idea into question. Not because he's against positivity, but because he wants to dig deeper into what actually works, and what just puts a band-aid over deeper wounds. He explains that positive thinking often becomes just another form of resistance. Let's say you're feeling anxious or sad. Instead of truly being with that feeling, understanding where it's coming from, you force yourself to think positive. It's fine. Everything's great. I'm okay. But deep down, your body doesn't believe it. Your heart knows something's off. And now, instead of healing, you're just layering fake optimism over real pain. Nguyen describes how this creates inner conflict. You're feeling one thing, but trying to think something else. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can push it down with force for a little while, but eventually it's going to pop back up. Same with emotions. Same with thoughts. The problem with positive thinking isn't that it's wrong, it's that it's based on a false assumption, that your negative thoughts are bad and need to be replaced or fixed. But the truth is, thoughts aren't good or bad. They're just thoughts. And resisting the so-called negative ones only gives them more power. This chapter is all about radical acceptance. Instead of trying to replace your thoughts with better ones, what if you just let all your thoughts come and go without attaching to them at all? What if you didn't need to make your thinking more positive, but simply made your awareness stronger? That's the shift Nguyen is pointing toward. He also brings up something really important. The obsession with positive thinking often keeps us trapped in the same mental game. We're still operating in the world of thought. Still identifying with the mind. Still trying to control it all. And as long as we're doing that, we're not really free. What we need isn't better thoughts. We need less identification with thought altogether. We need space. Stillness. presence. Because from that space, true peace arises, not the forced peace of positive affirmations, but the real kind. The kind that's already inside you, once the noise fades away. So here's the core message of the chapter. Positive thinking isn't wrong. It just isn't enough. Real transformation comes not from managing your mind, but from stepping outside of it. From realizing you were never your thoughts to begin with. That's the deep peace Joseph Nguyen is guiding us toward, not the kind you talk yourself into, but the kind that's already here, beneath the layers of noise. Now, Chapter 6. The Only Way to Experience Peace. This chapter delivers one of the most important ideas in the entire book, something many of us spend our whole lives searching for without realizing we've been looking in the wrong place. Joseph Nguyen begins by addressing a common assumption, that peace is something we have to achieve. We think we'll finally feel at peace once we get the job, find the partner, heal the wound, or fix our thoughts. But in doing that, we're always chasing. We're always in pursuit of something just out of reach. But Nguyen flips the script. He says peace is not something you create. It's something you experience when you stop identifying with your thoughts. That's it. Not when your life is perfect. Not when your mind is silent. Not when everything outside of you is calm. Peace is always available, but only in the now, and only when you're rooted in awareness instead of the mental stories that constantly pull you away from it. He uses a beautiful metaphor. Imagine the sky. It's always clear and blue, even on cloudy days. The clouds might cover it up for a while, but the sky itself never disappears. Your natural state, your peaceful, quiet self, is the sky. Thoughts and emotions are just clouds passing through. They don't define the sky. They don't change it. But the moment you identify with a thought, especially a stressful or fearful one, you lose sight of that open, peaceful space. You become the cloud. You live inside the storm. And peace feels far away, even though it was never gone. So how do we return to peace? Nguyen tells us it's not about force. It's not about thinking peaceful thoughts. It's about becoming aware of your inner world, watching the thoughts arise and pass without grabbing onto them. Without analyzing, judging, or reacting. Just seeing them. Allowing them. Letting them be. He says, peace is the result of being present. And presence means you're not lost in thought. You're here, now, noticing life as it is, not as your mind wants it to be. And here's where it gets deeper. He reminds us that we don't find peace by fixing our thoughts. We find peace by realizing we are not our thoughts. That realization alone starts to dissolve the need to fight, control, or fix anything. It's a shift from resistance to allowance. From doing to simply being. It doesn't mean we don't care about our lives. It doesn't mean we stop setting goals or making choices. But we stop trying to find fulfillment through mental effort alone. Because mental effort can't give us what we're really seeking. By the end of the chapter, Nguyen makes something very clear. Peace is not in the future. It's not at the end of a to-do list. It's not found through more thinking. Peace is what remains when you stop believing that your thoughts are who you are. Next is Chapter 7. You are not the mind. This chapter marks a major turning point in the book. Up until now, we've been exploring how thoughts create suffering and how peace comes from disidentifying with them. But here, Joseph Nguyen takes that idea to its deepest level, by asking the big question, if you are not your thoughts, then who are you? It's a question that feels simple on the surface, but the more you sit with it, the more it opens up something profound. Nguyen starts by pointing out something you've probably experienced 1,000 times without thinking about it. Have you ever noticed a thought arise, like, I'm such a failure, or, what if this goes wrong? And then notice yourself noticing that thought? That moment of observation, that quiet awareness, is key. Because that awareness isn't the thought. It's not reacting. It's just watching. And that, Nguyen says, is who you really are. Not the thought. Not the reaction. Not the mental noise. You are the awareness behind all of it. The witness. The quiet observer that sees it all but doesn't get caught up in it unless it chooses to. This is where Nguyen introduces a really powerful truth. The mind is a tool, not an identity. It's meant to help us navigate the world, solve problems, make plans, create ideas. But somewhere along the way, we made the mind our home. We moved into our thoughts and started living there, 24/7. We forgot that we're actually something much bigger, quieter, and wiser than the thoughts we think. He compares it to watching a movie. When you're deeply immersed in a movie, it can feel real. You might cry, laugh, feel scared, but deep down, you always know you're in a theater. You're the one watching. That's what life is like when you wake up to your awareness. You stop mistaking the movie of the mind for your identity. You become the one who sees, without getting pulled in. And this isn't just a spiritual idea, it has real-world power. Because when you stop identifying with the mind, anxiety loosens its grip. Fear no longer controls your decisions. You don't take things so personally. You can respond to life instead of reacting. You can breathe again. Nguyen reassures us that we don't need to fight the mind. We just need to step back. Watch it like you'd watch the weather, clouds coming and going, storms rising and fading, all while the sky remains untouched. That sky is you. And the beautiful part? Once you realize you're not the mind begins to settle on its own. You don't have to force it into silence. Awareness naturally quiets it, like a flashlight shining into a dark room. So this chapter isn't just about detaching from thoughts. It's about remembering who you really are, the one who sees. The peace you're looking for isn't something to achieve. It's what's always been there, beneath the noise, waiting to be noticed. Next is Chapter 8, Suffering Only Exists in the Mind. This chapter takes the insight from the last one, realizing you are not the mind, and goes even deeper by showing us how that realization dissolves suffering at its root. Joseph Nguyen begins by asking us to really look at suffering. Where does it live? Where does it begin? We tend to think it's caused by external events, a breakup, a lost job, a failure, a rude comment. But when we pause and examine closely, we realize the suffering doesn't come directly from what happened, it comes from what our mind says about what happened. It's not the breakup itself, but the thoughts that follow. I'm not lovable, I'll never find someone else, what did I do wrong? It's not losing the job, but the spiral of, I'm a failure, this always happens to me, what if I can't recover? Nguyen reveals a hard but freeing truth. Suffering doesn't live in the experience. It lives in the interpretation. It's not the pain that hurts most, it's the story we tell ourselves about the pain. And all of that, every ounce of it, happens in the mind. He's not saying pain isn't real. Of course, pain is part of life. Physical pain, emotional heartbreak, disappointment, it all happens. But suffering, the ongoing mental resistance to what is, that's optional. That's created. That's maintained by believing thoughts. The mind constantly clings to the past or worries about the future. It replays, it analyzes, it judges, it compares. And that's where suffering breeds. Nguyen gently points out that the present moment, right here, right now, is usually okay. It might not be perfect. But it's peaceful, unless the mind is stirred up. He invites us to try something radical again. What happens if you stop feeding the story? What if you just let the moment be, without naming it good or bad? Without believing what your mind says about it? You may still feel sensations, but the sharp edge of suffering begins to fade. Because it only existed in thought. Nguyen offers another powerful perspective. The mind wants control. It thinks it can prevent pain or protect us through constant thinking. But it often does the opposite. It creates more tension, more fear, more disconnection. And once we see that, we can begin to loosen our grip on the mind's version of reality. Here's the heart of the chapter. When you stop identifying with your mind, suffering no longer has a place to live. It may knock on the door, but you don't have to answer. You can watch the storm pass, while staying rooted in something deeper than thought, your awareness, your presence, your peace. By the end of this chapter, Nguyen helps you feel something truly empowering. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're just caught in a pattern of believing thoughts. And the moment you stop feeding those thoughts, the pattern can break. The suffering can dissolve. And in its place, peace can return. because it was never really gone. This one's a game changer. It reminds you that peace isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. And you remember it the moment you stop chasing, fixing, and believing every single thought. Say the word, and we'll move right into chapter 9. Things are about to open up even more. This chapter zooms in on something deeply powerful, what really causes all the suffering we experience. And Joseph Nguyen makes it clear right away, the root of suffering is identification with the mind. Now, that might sound familiar from earlier chapters, but here he breaks it down in a way that really hits home. It's not just that we have thoughts, it's that we believe them. We attach to them. We make them mean something about us. And then we live as if those thoughts are truth. Think of it this way, a thought pops into your head like, "I'm not good enough." If you just let it come and go, it's harmless, just noise. But if you believe it, if you give it your attention and energy, now you're living from it. Now you're reacting to life from a place of lack, fear, or insecurity. That's where suffering starts, not from the world, but from the meaning we assign to it through thought. Nguyen says the most painful experiences we have come from this core misunderstanding, that we are our thoughts. That our mind defines who we are. And once we lock into that belief, we start to suffer needlessly. He paints a picture of the cycle. We identify with the mind produces stories, we believe those stories, emotions respond, more thoughts arise, we believe those too. It becomes a loop. And the only way out is to step off that hamster wheel completely, not by thinking new thoughts, but by becoming aware of the whole process. He reminds us that awareness is key. It's the part of you that can observe the mind without getting pulled in. It's the space where clarity, peace, and truth naturally exist, because awareness doesn't need to fix or judge anything. It just sees. And that's where real healing begins. Not by rewriting your thoughts, but by no longer identifying with them at all. Nguyen also emphasizes that this is a practice. The mind's habits are strong. It's spent years, or maybe decades, running the show. So at first, this shift can feel strange. It might even feel like losing control. But what you're actually doing is releasing control, because the control was never real in the first place. It was just the mind's attempt to feel safe by thinking more, worrying more, doing more. But safety, peace, and healing don't come from more thinking. They come from recognizing that you're not the mind. You're the observer of the mind. This chapter feels like a doorway. Once you really get this, even just a little, your entire relationship with your thoughts begins to change. And as that shift happens, so does your experience of life. You stop being dragged by every emotion. You stop reacting to every fear. You begin to rest in something deeper, more still, more real. And in that space, suffering doesn't survive. Because it was never you to begin with. Let's dive into chapter 10, the end of suffering. This chapter is where the real transformation begins. Everything Joseph Nguyen has laid out so far, the illusion of thought, the separation between you and your mind, the nature of peace, all of it leads here, to the truth that suffering can end. And not just temporarily, not just when life is perfect, but fully and completely, no matter what's happening around you. Nguyen starts by clarifying something that we often misunderstand. Suffering is not the same thing as pain. Pain is inevitable, it's part of life. We lose people. We get hurt. Plans fall apart. Life changes. That's real. That's human. But suffering, that ongoing mental, emotional weight we carry, is optional. Suffering is the resistance we create against what is. It's the inner tension that builds when we say, "This shouldn't be happening." It's the endless replay of what went wrong, the anxiety over what might go wrong, and the harsh inner narrative that tells us we're not enough, we're broken, or we need to be different to be okay. Nguyen invites us to take a radical step. What if we stopped believing that resistance was necessary? What if we stopped feeding the mind's constant commentary and just allowed life to unfold, even the uncomfortable parts, with awareness and openness? And here's where he offers a truly life-altering idea. Suffering ends the moment we stop identifying with the thinker. Let's sit with that. You don't need to kill the ego, silence your thoughts forever, or become some kind of emotionless monk. You simply have to recognize moment by moment that you are not your mind. You are not the one thinking, you are the one witnessing the thoughts. The second you remember that, there's space. There's stillness. There's freedom. Nguyen uses a powerful metaphor. Imagine you're watching a storm through a window. Lightning, thunder, wind, it's wild out there. But inside you're dry. You're safe. You're observing. That's what it's like when you rest in awareness. The storm of the mind might rage, but you're not in the storm. You're just watching. The suffering begins only when you forget that and step outside into the storm, believing it defines you. This chapter also dismantles the idea that fixing our thoughts will fix our suffering. Nguyen says that's just more mind chatter, more effort, more struggle. True freedom isn't about controlling or replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. It's about disidentifying from all thoughts altogether. Positive or negative, the mind is still a tool, not your identity. One of the most eye-opening parts of this chapter is when Nguyen explains how suffering often continues simply because we believe it serves a purpose. The mind convinces us that worrying shows we care. That guilt means we're good people. That anxiety is being realistic. But these are just stories. Habitual, deeply conditioned patterns. When you question them, they fall apart. And here's the kicker. The end of suffering doesn't require any special skills or years of self-work. It only requires presence. The more we rest in the now, the more we see that suffering only exists in the past, through regret, or the future through fear. The now is always manageable. Always peaceful. He gently reminds us that the path to the end of suffering is not a battle, it's a surrender. Not a giving up, but a letting go. A release of the need to mentally grip onto life. A softening into what is. The chapter closes with an invitation that's not loud or forceful, but deeply sincere. Stop running. Stop fixing. Stop resisting. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to remember who you already are. The awareness that never suffers, the presence that has always been there underneath the noise. And in that remembrance, suffering ends. This chapter is like the calm after the storm. A realization that peace has always been yours, not something to earn, but something to return to. Next is chapter 11. You are not broken and you never have been. This chapter feels like a warm hand on the heart. It's not just informational, it's healing. It meets you in the places where you've quietly wondered, "What's wrong with me?" and gently tells you the truth, nothing. Absolutely nothing has ever been wrong with you. Joseph Nguyen opens this chapter by speaking directly to something nearly all of us carry. This quiet, lingering feeling that we're somehow flawed. That we're missing something. That we have to keep striving, achieving, proving, or fixing ourselves to be enough. But that belief, he says, is the core illusion. And it's the one responsible for so much of our inner suffering. He explains that the idea of being broken doesn't come from truth, it comes from the mind. The same mind that compares you to others. The same mind that recites old criticism like a playlist stuck on repeat. The same mind that's shaped by past pain, fear, and conditioning. If you believe that voice, of course you'll think you're not okay. But if you step back and watch it, you begin to realize something extraordinary. The voice is just noise. It's not you. Nguyen offers a powerful reframe here. He says, imagine a blue sky that's always clear and calm. That's your true nature. Now picture clouds passing through the sky, some light and soft, some dark and stormy. Those are your thoughts and emotions. But no matter how heavy the clouds get, the sky itself is never damaged. It never disappears. It doesn't need to fix the clouds. It just is, open, clear, untouched. That's you. You are the sky. You are not the passing storm. This chapter is about reclaiming that truth. You are whole. Not because you've done something to earn it, but because wholeness is your natural state. And anytime you feel disconnected, it's not because you've lost yourself, it's because you've been listening to the mind's stories instead of resting in your own awareness. He also addresses a subtle, important point here, even self-improvement can become a trap if it's rooted in the belief that you're not okay as you are. We chase better habits, better bodies, better emotions, but underneath that can be a quiet rejection of ourselves. True healing, Nguyen says, doesn't come from becoming better. It comes from remembering that you already are enough. He makes it clear that you don't need to fix every thought, master every emotion, or perfect every part of your life before you can feel peace. Peace is already within you, underneath all the layers of mental noise. And the more you return to that inner stillness, the more you see that your worth, your light, your enoughness was never up for debate in the first place. This chapter isn't just a message, it's a shift in identity. It's a moment to stop trying to become someone and to start being who you already are, whole, present, aware, peaceful. He ends the chapter with a line that truly lands. There is nothing to fix, nothing to do, and nowhere to get to. You only need to wake up to who you've always been. And with that, he invites us to let go, not just of the thoughts, but of the idea that we need to be anyone other than ourselves. That right there? That's the beginning of freedom. Next is chapter 12, Returning Home. This final chapter feels like the softest landing. It's not about discovering something new, it's about coming back to something ancient, familiar, and deeply true, yourself. Not the self shaped by thoughts, trauma, or fear, but your original self. The awareness that has always been there, steady, quiet, and untouched. Joseph Nguyen opens the chapter by saying that healing, awakening, or peace isn't about adding more, it's about subtracting everything that isn't real. All the stories, all the identities, all the noise that's been layered over your natural state of being. And when you strip all that away, what's left isn't emptiness, it's presence. It's peace. It's home. He describes this journey as one of unlearning. We spend our whole lives absorbing beliefs about who we should be, what we need to do, how we're supposed to feel. But most of that is noise created by the mind and reinforced by the world around us. At some point, we have to pause and ask, who am I really, without all these thoughts? And the answer isn't something you figure out. It's something you feel when you stop searching, when you stop running from the now, when you finally let yourself be. Nguyen emphasizes that the peace you've been chasing, through success, relationships, self-help, or even spiritual practice, has always been here. You just had to look in the right direction. Not outward but inward. Not toward the mind, but toward the stillness that holds it all. He talks about how most people try to fix their lives through effort, force, or control. But that just leads to more resistance. The real shift happens when you stop trying to control life and start flowing with it. When you allow each moment to be exactly as it is. When you trust that your awareness, your true self, can hold any experience without needing to change it. There's also a powerful reminder here. You don't need to feel peaceful all the time to be at peace. Peace is not the absence of emotion. It's the space that allows all emotions to arise without resistance. Joy, sadness, fear, stillness, they're all welcome. And that radical acceptance, that full permission to be human, is the most healing thing of all. Nguyen brings it full circle by reminding us, the mind will still think. That's what it does. Thoughts will still come. But the difference is, you won't be trapped by them anymore. You'll watch them come and go like clouds in the sky, knowing that none of them define you. You've come home to something deeper. The chapter closes on a note that feels less like an ending and more like a beginning. A beginning of life lived from awareness, not thought. From truth, not fear. From presence, not performance. And his final message is soft but powerful. You were never lost. You just forgot who you are. And now you remember. Now we are at part 13, letting go of the need to understand everything. At this point in the journey, Joseph Nguyen takes us somewhere unexpected, but incredibly freeing. He invites us to loosen our grip on one of the most deeply ingrained habits of the mind, the need to understand everything. Now, that might sound strange at first. After all, we've been taught to seek understanding, to figure things out, to analyze and find meaning. But Nguyen gently explains that the obsessive need to mentally grasp every experience is actually a trap, one that keeps us stuck in suffering. He reminds us that life, in its rawest form, is not something to understand, it's something to experience. The moment we try to dissect everything with the mind, we step out of the flow and into resistance. And the more we chase meaning with our thoughts, the more we miss the presence that's right here, right now. Nguyen gives examples of how this plays out. We overanalyze why someone hurt us. We try to mentally solve our anxiety like it's a puzzle. We question our past decisions over and over, thinking if we just figure it out, we'll finally feel okay. But here's the truth, the mind can't heal what the heart needs to feel. He explains that healing and peace come not through understanding everything, but through allowing everything. Allowing the confusion. Allowing the sadness. Allowing life to be messy, unpredictable, and beautifully mysterious. When we stop trying to figure it all out, we give ourselves permission to simply be, and that is where real clarity begins. There's a deep spiritual undertone here too. Nguyen points to the idea that the universe, life, or consciousness doesn't always work in ways the mind can comprehend. Some things are meant to be felt, not solved. Some answers come in silence, not thought. And some of our deepest peace arises not from knowing, but from trusting. Letting go of the need to understand is not about giving up. It's about surrendering control. It's about realizing that the mind will never fully grasp life because it was never meant to. Your awareness, your presence, your being, those are what connect you to truth, not the endless spin of thoughts. He beautifully sums it up with this truth. You don't need to understand everything to be at peace. You only need to stop resisting what is. Next is Chapter 14, The Power of Surrender. This part is all about something most of us resist, yet crave at the deepest level, surrender. Not giving up. Not defeat. But the peaceful, powerful act of letting go. Joseph Nguyen starts by addressing a misconception we all carry. We tend to associate surrender with weakness, like it's something we do when we're out of options. But in truth, surrender is one of the most courageous, conscious acts a human being can make. It's not passive. It's not helpless. It's choosing to trust something beyond the mind. It's choosing to stop fighting with life. He explains that the constant need to control our circumstances, our emotions, other people, even our own thoughts, is what fuels our inner suffering. The mind clings, fixes, resists, plans, replays, worries. And in doing so, it creates tension, stress, fear. We think that if we just try harder, we'll feel okay. But the opposite is true. The trying is what keeps us stuck. Surrender, Nguyen says, is about releasing the illusion that you have to do it all. It's about letting go of control and letting life lead. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally awake enough to see that peace isn't found in force, it's found in flow. He paints surrender not as falling apart, but as falling into something bigger than your thoughts, into presence, into stillness, into truth. There's a beautiful metaphor here. Imagine you've been swimming upstream your whole life, trying to control the river. You're exhausted, but you keep paddling. And then, in a moment of clarity, you let go. You stop fighting. You turn around. You float. That's surrender. Life begins to carry you, not because it's perfect, but because you finally trust that it knows the way. Nguyen also talks about how surrender doesn't mean you're suddenly free of pain or hardship. Life will still be life. But instead of resisting it, you begin to accept it. And in that acceptance, the suffering dissolves. You stop creating extra pain through mental resistance. You meet each moment with openness, and that openness is your superpower. This part is deeply spiritual, but it's also incredibly practical. Because the moment you surrender, even for a breath, you feel it. The ease. The stillness. The clarity. It's not something you have to chase or earn. It's always available. Right now. In this breath. In this moment. Nguyen ends this section with a message that lands like a whisper in the soul. Peace is not found in controlling life. Peace is found in trusting it. This chapter is the exhale we didn't know we needed. A soft but powerful invitation to lay down our mental armor and simply be, right here, right now. Now we are at Chapter 15, Living from the Space of Awareness. In this part, Nguyen invites us to step into a new way of living. Not driven by thoughts. Not shaped by fear or habit. But led by awareness. This is where you begin to live not as the mind, but as the observer behind it. And once you start doing that, everything begins to change, from how you respond to stress, to how you relate to yourself and others. He describes awareness as a kind of open, spacious clarity. It's not about being positive all the time or avoiding negative thoughts. It's about witnessing what comes up, without getting pulled into it. You feel the emotion. You notice the thought. But instead of identifying with it, you stay rooted in the stillness behind it. You don't become the anger or the anxiety or the doubt. You simply notice it, allow it, and let it pass. Nguyen is clear. Living from awareness doesn't mean your life becomes perfect or peaceful 24/7. What it does mean is that your relationship to life changes. Instead of reacting to everything from a place of fear or judgment, you meet life with curiosity, with presence. You stop needing to fix or control everything, and instead you learn to respond, from a deeper place of stillness and clarity. This way of living isn't about escaping reality. It's about being more in it than ever before. But now you're anchored. Grounded. You're not constantly tossed around by your emotions or lost in your thoughts. You see clearly. You feel deeply. And you choose consciously. He explains that awareness is not something you need to create. It's already here. It's the you that notices your breath. The you that feels the sunlight on your skin. The you that's still, even in chaos. The more you rest in that space, the more your inner world begins to shift. From noise to peace, from fear to love. Nguyen encourages us to bring this awareness into everyday life. When you're walking, just walk. When you're eating, just eat. When you're with someone, be with them. No multitasking, no mental noise, just presence. That's where the richness of life is found. Not in what you're doing, but in how present you are while doing it. He reminds us that awareness isn't cold or detached, it's love. Real love. The kind that doesn't judge, doesn't grasp, doesn't control. Just pure, accepting, witnessing presence. And he leaves us with a beautiful practice. When you're caught in your thoughts, simply ask, who is aware of this? Not to analyze, but to return. To remember. You'll find that you're already home, in the space where peace lives. This part feels like stepping through a door. Into a new way of being. A more grounded, peaceful, present version of yourself. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've finally remembered who you've always been. Next is part 16, you are already whole. This part hits different. It's not about fixing anything. It's not about achieving enlightenment, becoming better, or solving all your problems. It's about realizing, on a soul-deep level, that there's nothing wrong with you. There never was. There never will be. Nguyen leads us back to something that's easy to forget in the world we live in. Wholeness is not something you earn. It's something you are. It doesn't matter what you've done, what you've been through, what you've believed about yourself. Underneath it all, at your core, you are untouched. Unbreakable. Complete. He explains how so many of us go through life chasing something to make us feel worthy, success, approval, validation, love. We try to fix our minds, our emotions, our personalities, thinking, if I just change this, then I'll be okay. But that cycle never ends. Because the core issue isn't that you're broken, it's that you believe you are. This part of the book is like someone holding your face gently and saying, stop. Look. You're already enough. It's not self-help hype. It's not ego. It's a deeper knowing that when you peel back the layers, beneath the fear, the trauma, the self-doubt, there is a peaceful, radiant being who's been there all along. That's the real you. The true you. Nguyen challenges the idea that you need to be fixed or improved. He says healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You don't need more. You need less. Less judgment. Less noise. Less pretending. What's left is pure awareness. Pure being. He also reminds us that even the messy parts of you are not signs of brokenness. they're invitations to return to yourself. Emotions like sadness, anxiety, anger, they aren't enemies. They're not flaws. They're signals. Messengers. And when you meet them with love and presence, they soften. They pass. And in that moment, you realize you were never the emotion. You were the one witnessing it. The awareness behind it all. Nguyen invites us to sit with ourselves, not to fix or improve anything, but just to be. That's the medicine. That's the practice. That's the freedom. And he ends with something powerful. The love you've been searching for has always been inside you. The peace you've been chasing is who you already are. Stop looking out there. Come home. This part doesn't just give you insight, it gives you permission to stop running, to stop proving, and to finally, truly rest in who you already are. Now, finally, Chapter 17, Remembering Who You Truly Are. In this closing part, Joseph Nguyen doesn't try to give you more answers. Instead, he invites you to remember. Remember that everything you've been searching for, peace, love, clarity, freedom, it's already within you. It's always been there. This journey wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about unlearning all the stories that told you otherwise. He reminds us that we are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are not our past or our fears or the labels we've carried. We are awareness. The spacious, unchanging presence that observes everything, yet remains untouched by it all. This truth is simple, but its power is life-changing. Because once you really get it, not just in your head, but in your heart, you start to live differently. You stop resisting every moment. You stop believing every thought. And you start to live in alignment with your natural state, one of peace, stillness, and love. One's voice here is calm, clear, and loving. He doesn't ask you to strive for anything more. Instead, he gently nudges you to let go. Let go of the mental noise. Let go of the fear. Let go of the pressure to get it right. And in that letting go, you fall back into the truth that's always been there. You are enough, exactly as you are. He encourages you to come back to this awareness, again and again. Not just when life feels peaceful, but especially when it doesn't. When you're anxious, come back. When you're lost in your thoughts, come back. When you feel disconnected, return. Because every moment is an invitation to remember, to shift from thinking into being. And maybe the most powerful part of this final message is that you're not being asked to do anything, only to be what you already are. No need to change. No need to fight. Just rest in the stillness, and let life unfold from there. Nguyen closes with deep compassion and a sense of quiet empowerment. He reminds you that this isn't the end, it's the beginning of a new relationship with yourself. One that's rooted not in fear or striving, but in awareness and truth. And his final whisper is one you'll feel in your bones. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are awareness itself, peaceful, whole, and free. You always have been. That's the end of the journey. But it's also the start of something real. A new way of seeing. A new way of living. One breath at a time, one moment at a time. This book isn't about teaching you how to fix your life. It's about helping you remember who you truly are underneath the noise, the fear, and the false beliefs that have kept you trapped in suffering. Joseph Nguyen takes us on a journey inward, a journey where the goal isn't self-improvement, but self-remembrance. He reminds us that our thoughts are not facts, that suffering is not required, and that we are already whole. We don't need to earn peace, we just need to stop resisting the present moment and drop the belief that our worth is tied to our thoughts. He shows us that true freedom begins the moment we stop believing every thought that enters our mind. The moment we return to awareness, the still, peaceful presence that watches without judgment. That presence is your true self. And it's always been there. The real power of this book isn't in the words, it's in the silence between them. It's in the space where the mind gets quiet and you finally hear the voice of your own soul. That's where transformation lives. That's where peace begins. This isn't just a book, it's a shift in consciousness. If you found this summary insightful and valuable, don't forget to show your support by subscribing to the Mindful Brief on YouTube. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this audiobook summary, share it with your peers, friends, or family who might benefit from it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps us create more in-depth and valuable content for you. Stay tuned for more summaries, insights, and strategies to elevate your knowledge and career. Subscribe now and be part of the journey.